afternoon. I know it's been a while since I've been on here again. I promise I'm gonna get better at that soon because very soon I will be work at home. I only have one more day in office and then I will be home all the time and I will have 2 hours more in every day to get stuff done. So, with this, I want to do a quick writing update on my own stuff real quick and then we're going to dive into the topic because my life is boring and I'm sure you don't want to hear it. But I have one chapter left to write in my current draft. I know I said I had one chapter left before, but that turned into 3 chapters, then it turned back into 2 chapters. Anyway, I have one chapter left and then maybe possibly an epilogue. We will see. I'm going to try to finish that tomorrow and probably dive into it a little bit tonight because tomorrow's a holiday and they're forcing me not to work, which is annoying. But that's where I'm at there. Anyway, I figured it might be fun to talk on a topic. I always think there's all these like fun topics I like to talk about and I script out these videos and they're really articulate stuff when I have them in writing. Maybe I should do blogging because that would help. But they're really articulate in writing and then I go to talk about them and I'm like, I'm an idiot, I don't know what I'm talking about. But I wanted to talk about avoiding slash subverting tropes, cliches, those kind of things. First things first, with tropes and cliches, a lot of times those terms are used interchangeably and it's one of those things like, you know how all squares are a rectangle but not all rectangles are squares? It's kind of like all cliches are tropes but not all tropes are cliches. And a lot of times the word trope is kind of said with a negative connotation to it, but really it just means it's kind of just a writing device. And with it being a writing device, yeah, sometimes they're overused. It's a tool that can be overused and that's when it becomes cliche, but they're still useful tools. And so are cliches sometimes. There's a reason why they're cliches, because they're really useful in certain circumstances. So with that being said, we're gonna kind of dive into a couple of things that you can do if you're concerned about if something's a cliche in your writing or wanting to avoid sounding too cliche or avoid having tropes that are overused, even if they're not quite in the realm of cliche yet, but they're being commonly used. So we're gonna go ahead and dive right into that. The first thing that you can do if you are concerned about writing cliches into your story or using tropes that are maybe a little bit overused or that people maybe don't like, they're in that particular genre and that's their main genre that they read, is study up on the common tropes and cliches that are in that genre that you're writing in. You can also definitely look into overall cliches and tropes because quite a few of them cross over into different genres and they usually kind of have their like little subset tropes, certain flavor to it that's done depending on what genre it's being used in. One thing I will warn you about is that if you study cliches and tropes, you may find that it will ruin your enjoyment of certain stories. It basically gets to, if you know them, you start to recognize when a story is leading into it and you're like, oh, this is what's about to happen. It like gives you future telling abilities for a story. It's like the lamest superpower ever. but yeah, forewarning there, one thing to keep in mind. Now that actually can be a helpful tool for you to use though when subverting a trope or a cliche, is that people are so used to those certain tropes or cliches that if you lead into them, they are expecting a certain thing to happen. You can basically shock them or surprise your audience by not doing that thing, even though it seemed like you were leading up to it, and you go in an entirely different direction. Now, that kind of leads me into the second thing you can do if you're worried about writing something cliche or a little bit tropey in your writing, is don't go with the first thing you think of in order to subvert that trope or that cliche that you find yourself writing yourself into. The reason being, and I'm going to kind of borrow a example that was used in Terrible Writing Advice, just because it's a good one. It's one that pretty much universally people will recognize, and that's probably why they used it too. But for example, imagine that you are watching a character, and the character is the savvy traveler. Let's pretend it's Indiana Jones, okay? Indiana Jones is in some foreign country, kind of. Let's say he's like in Egypt or something, and he's going down some crowded marketplace, and some little kid running through the street bumps into Indiana Jones, falls on his butt, and then like apologizes and scampers off. What just happened? You know what just happened because you've seen it 1,000,001 times. That's kind of a cliche. The name of that trope is the precocious pickpocket. You know what happened? That kid stole something from him, probably something that he needs, and he will later discover, oh shoot, that kid in the market stole this. Like he's gonna go to some meeting with some guy, try to pull it out of his pocket, and be like, oh crap, where's my thing? So you know what's gonna happen. And when you see that kid running down the street, you already know what's going to happen before he even bumps into your savvy traveler character. Now, here's why I say don't go with the first thing that you would use to subvert that trope. Now, you may think of some other thing first as a subversion of that trope, but the first thing that comes to my mind, because I'm thinking Indiana Jones, he knows about this stuff, he knows how to travel through a market, is that kid comes up, he bumps into him, and Indy like grabs him by the wrist as he's like trying to pull the thing out of his pocket and catches him and is like, you're not doing that. The kid is startled. Through some sort of hijinks / conversation, they end up becoming buddies, and he ends up having this kid as kind of like a sidekick. That's what my first thought of a subversion is. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's because it is. It's been done 1,000,000 times too. That is also a trope that's been used a bunch of times as people recognized that the precocious pickpocket was a overused trope, they tried to subvert it, and that's the first thing that a lot of people thought of, is do it this way because it's startling, it's different than the other thing. But now that subversion has been used so many times that it is now a trope of its own. And that's one of the tricky things about subverting cliches or tropes, is that everybody is trying to do that now. So it ends up creating new ones, and that's constantly evolving and changing. People's ideas of what is overused and what is a cliche are constantly changing because writers are always trying to subvert stuff, which makes new branches off of that particular trope. Now, what I would suggest doing is something a little bit similar to, I'm trying to remember, iWriterly did something similar to this to kind of figure out, I think she was talking about like plotting, not necessarily trying to avoid tropes or cliches or anything, but it is a good way of going about this, and this is something that I have used in the past, is don't go with your first option right away that you think of. Think of a good 4 or 5 things that you could do to subvert that trope, and then depending on where you know you want to go with the story, depending on how you know your characters, depending on really what your story is, pick the best option out of those options for what you're going to do to subvert that. Now, if I were to do that, there's a couple of options that we have. Now, obviously, we have the first option that I represented, which is the pickpocket doesn't get away, he gets caught in the act, and then they end up becoming teammates. Another option you could have is that, depending on the story, obviously there's going to need to be proper setup, and depending on the story, you're going to have it different ways. Perhaps that person, that savvy traveler going through the market, let's say it's not Indiana Jones, it's just some savvy traveler, kind of Indiana Jones-esque, going through the market, is actually covertly doing this as charity. He's purposely getting pickpocketed, but he realizes that if he went around just handing out coins to little kids or something that are on the streets, that he'd end up bombarded with a bunch of people and he can't possibly give them all stuff. So what he does is he purposely walks through the streets with coins easily accessible to poor little street urchin kids, and he lets them pickpocket him, even though he knows what they're doing, type thing. That's option number 1. Depending on what your story is, you could do that. Option number 2, which might lend itself a little bit more to like maybe an espionage type story, would be he had something in his pocket that was valuable. He knew these kids were part of a certain group where maybe like it's a gang that uses children to go pickpocket people and stuff, which is actually a thing. Isn't that sad? And the thing he had in his pocket that got pickpocketed had like a tracking device in it. And he purposely knew that these kids were going to lead him back to the gang that he's actually searching for if they pickpocket him. So he goes to the market intentionally trying to get pickpocketed to have that happen. Number 3 that I can think of, hold on, I gotta actually think of it. I had a couple of these prepped, hold on. Okay. Number 3, and this is also one I think that they used in Terrible Writing Advice, but I can't quite remember, was subverting the trope by having the kid run up, bump into the guy, pickpocket him, and then immediately stop him afterwards and be like, hey, dude, I just pickpocketed you. Seems like you're not real good at going through the city. You must need a guide. That kind of one. Now that one actually has been used a reasonable amount of times. I've seen that a little bit. And I do like that one because I don't think it's been overused, but that is another option. 4th option, I think I'm on the 4th one. 4th or 5th? 5th or 4th, something like that. And this is the one that I like the most, especially if your goal in the story was to do that first option. Basically, to end up with the pickpocket kid as the savvy traveler's kind of companion slash sidekick. If you wanted that to happen, but didn't want to do it in that way that was a little bit more straightforward, but is a little bit cliche because it has been used a lot, have the kid run up, bump into the guy. You're kind of incorporating 2 different ideas here. Let's say the kid works for some underground society type thing where they use kids as part of their like spy network thing. Kid runs up, pickpockets the guy, runs off, gets back to his little spy base with the people he works for. He thinks he's been successful. He arrives there. The leader of the like group is there and he says, good job, I'm glad you made it back safe. Kind of turns and says, so how did you think you did? And there's the guy that he pickpocketed. And the guy's like, yeah, I think he'll do. And then you end up finding out that that was actually a test this entire time, where the savvy traveler was actually working with the underground people to try to find a kid that would be good at doing the job that he's going to have to do. And this was kind of a test to see how well he could do it. The kid would be surprised because he wasn't expecting that to happen. The audience wouldn't really be expecting that because that hasn't been done a ton. But you still end up with the same results where savvy traveler ends up partnered with the kid. You also give them a slightly different relationship dynamic that way, because maybe the kid isn't too happy about being tricked, and he kind of gets pushed into working with this guy by the guy who was kind of his boss. It creates a different dynamic. It gets you to the same place, but it's done in a slightly different way. And I don't think people would really see that coming as much as the other way of accomplishing the same thing. My last piece of advice on this topic, if you are concerned about cliches being in your writing and you just dread the fact that you're going to run into one and then you don't know what to do, is don't worry about it. And what I mean by that is cliches are cliche for a reason. Tropes are there for a reason. It's because they are writing tools, and sometimes they're useful. Sometimes they are necessary to a story, even if it is a cliche. Obviously, try your best to kind of mold it into something unique so that even though it resembles something that maybe has been overdone, it has something unique about it and that's a little bit different. Real quick example, because I don't want to go on another 10-minute rant, is, and this is a trope slash cliche that has caught a lot of flack, mostly because of the Twilight series, is love triangles. And by love triangles, I mean the thing where like 2 guys like 1 girl or 2 girls like 1 guy. You don't see that one as often because, I don't know. But that has caught a lot of flack. And that is mainly because people have used it in a way that people find annoying for far too long. Now, I wouldn't say don't have any love triangles ever. You just have to do them in a way that people don't find annoying, as that original cliche thought of a love triangle, where basically the girl's being indecisive and stupid about who she wants to be. She's stringing along some guy that she doesn't particularly like. She knows she doesn't like him, and she doesn't have really a good reason for keeping him around and stringing him along, other than,
but he's my friend and I don't want to lose my buddy or my protection. I better have two guys who are fawning over me to take care of me.
Hopefully that squirrel voice wasn't too obnoxious. But I have seen several stories that have a love triangle in it where it is done, where that's not a problem. It doesn't have that annoying aspect. And usually I've noticed that the ones that do have a love triangle or a hint at a love triangle that aren't annoying are where they, one, don't draw it out too long. Two, it's a more subdued version of it. Usually it includes where somebody has a crush on somebody else, but they're not really seriously considering it. Or they've confessed their love, but the person is pretty upfront with them. It's like, hey, dude, I'm sorry, I'm with this other person. Like, I feel really bad about it. I'm sorry I have to hurt your feelings. And then the other person's like, okay, I mean, I guess I understand, but I do still want to be friends. But you know that they're still kind of hurting in the background, and then there's still this little bit of tension where she's like, I feel bad, I know, but like, I'm over here. Like, you know? But anyway, I'm getting on the rabbit trail again. I did want to give an example of a story, just two stories off the top of my head that do use love triangles, and I did not find them annoying. Just to give you kind of an idea on how you might be able to use certain tropes, tweak them a little bit to where they aren't cliche. Brandon Sanderson actually used a little bit of a love triangle in the Stormlight Archives between, why am I blanking on the names? Shallan, Adolin, and Kaladin. Spoilers, by the way. But the reason why it wasn't annoying is that, one, Shallan kind of has a weird multiple personality thing going on, and one of her personalities is very decisive. She's like, no, I'm with Adolin. I love Adolin. But the other personality, who's a little bit more mischievous and stuff, you'd have to read the books to understand what the hell I'm talking about. But is like, yeah, but this guy's like a better match for you. It's better power dynamic, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no. Anyway, that's part of the reason why it's not annoying, is because she herself, like Shallan, is not conflicted. She knows who she wants to be. The problem is she's got this weird multi-personality thing that's kind of taking over her brain a little bit, and that's what's making it conflicted. And that's why it's a little bit less annoying, because you're not like, quit being a flake and just go with the guy that you're supposed to be with. It's more like she has something that's out of her control that's forcing her to be that way, and that's partially why it's not annoying. It's also partially not annoying because they never really confess their love for each other, and also it's not really love, it's more like just a little crush, like a vague attraction, and they end up cutting that off pretty quickly. It's not dragged out. At the risk of making this way too long again, another story that I really, really liked when I was a teenager and I really would like to reread, I believe it's called the Clady Journals, C-L-A-I-D-I Journals. I can't remember the name of the author. I just always call it the Wolf Tower series, even though that's like the second book in the series or something, I think. But basically, the love triangle premise is there's this girl, she's a servant, kind of like, and she's mistreated in this city that's surrounded by a giant desert. They basically sentence people to die by kicking them out of the city. They're constantly threatening to do that to her. She misbehaves. They beat her, so on and so forth. This prince shows up at the city, super attractive, like absolutely stunning, like most gorgeous guy she's ever seen. And he basically like picks her, if I remember the story correctly, I haven't read this in ages ago, picks her and says, hey, I'm sorry, I have like a prophecy where I have to take her back to my city and we're supposed to get married, otherwise my city is doomed. And basically she's like, well, he is really hot. It gets me out of being here where I'm getting beaten constantly. Yeah, I'll go. And she kind of develops this little bit of a crush on him. Though he's kind of bland about the whole idea of being with her. He like kind of strings her along a little bit and like acts like he's interested, but then other times he doesn't. They end up being taken by this caravan company back towards his city, like he hires them or something like that, if I remember right. And the guy who's in charge of the caravan company, they're kind of Viking-esque. Like I always imagine him being Khal Drogo from Game of Thrones. But anyway, she and him end up developing kind of this relationship where they obviously like each other. He ends up rescuing her, I think at least once. This is kind of a passive main character. But he ends up rescuing her at one point. This other guy has continued to show less and less interest in her that she kind of developed a crush on at first. But she's like, but I kind of committed to marry him, and besides, according to the prophecy, like his whole city is doomed if I don't, so I'm committed, I have to stay with this guy. But I really like this other guy because this other guy kind of sucks, but I kind of have to marry him. And to me that felt like a compelling enough reason why she wouldn't be able to just make up her mind. And she actually does kind of make up her mind. She's like, I have to stay with this guy because otherwise his city's doomed. Like, I can't put other people in danger just because I have feelings for this other person. And that series was like the first books that ever made me cry, because there's this really like touching scene where she ends up finding out that the one character was going to propose to her, but he doesn't for some reason. I don't remember what it was, but it was very sad. And anyway, I really like that series. And that was one situation where I didn't find a love triangle annoying. It was different. It wasn't a girl stringing along one guy that she doesn't really like and she doesn't have a real good reason for it. It's she's agreeing to go with him even though she really likes this other guy because she fears for other people's safety. And she feels like that's the only way to make that happen. Anyway, we end up I'm not gonna spoil it too bad, but basically we end up finding out that this guy was lying the entire time. He basically kidnapped her because there is some sort of like prophecy law thing where she has to be taken, but he's actually already married and married to somebody way hotter than her, and she finds out, and it was really that they wanted to use her for this other job in the city. And they basically kidnap her or take her away from the guy that she actually likes, and there's a whole plot line there. But anyway, I still ended up making this like 9 more minutes. Arrgh, I'm sorry. Okay, but anyway, that's just an example of how pretty much any cliche or trope can be done and done well. If you do it well and you do it in a slightly different way, it can still be compelling towards people who would typically say they don't like that cliche. Because even a week ago, I was still of the mindset that I'm like, ugh, I hate love triangles. Love triangles are so bleh. And then I thought about it as I was listening to Stormlight Archive, and I'm like, this is a love triangle. And I realized it, I'm like, but I like it. And then I was like, are there other stories that have love triangles that I've like never noticed? And then I thought about that other one, and I was like, oh, yep, that one had a love triangle. I was like, oh, here's another one that has a love triangle, but it wasn't done in an irritating way that bothered me. So anyway, I'm rambling again, and I apologize, and I appreciate your patience if you're getting all the way through this video. I always fall apart at the end. But that's that. Those are my kind of pieces of advice. Real quick recap. One, learn about the possible tropes and cliches that are common for your genre, because that way you know when you're getting yourself into one and you know how to subvert it more effectively. 2, don't go with your first option that you think of for subverting a trope or cliche that you find yourself writing yourself into, because a lot of times that has also been overdone, because if you thought of it first, so did everybody else who tried to subvert that trope. And 3, don't worry too much about avoiding cliches or tropes. They are helpful writing tools in many cases. Just try to do them in a way that hasn't been done as much, not necessarily subverting them, but just do them a little bit differently. You don't necessarily have to just take a Yui and do them entirely different, just tweak them a bit. Anyway, that's the end of that. Please let me know if you have caught any tropes or cliches in your own writing and you kind of had a panic moment where you're like, oh no, why did I write that? I think that would be interesting, and also if we have comments showing that, it will help to encourage people who struggle with that fear of writing themselves into those to know that everybody does that and it's not that big of a deal, and sometimes it is something that's okay. Anyway, I hope you guys all have a great evening. I'm sorry for the long video again, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.